Alrighty, guys, we are back with the Bobcat 642B repowerspecialist.com motor installation project. We've had quite a few things going on the last couple days. This has taken a lot longer than I had anticipated, not because of anything other than life in general, things that have been going on. We had a member of the family pass, and it's been quite stressful. Just juggling all of the scheduling, trying to be everywhere all at the same time. But I just wanted to give everybody an update as far as where I was. And I did reach out to repowerspecialist.com and spoke with two very nice gentlemen today about this kit, excuse me, and what we planned on doing as far as maybe some modifications to the instruction manual. No fault of really anyone. They didn't have this particular machine to be able to mock up everything correctly, and they haven't had a lot of feedback on this installation. So real quick, I want to run over the wiring that I have figured out on my own. This is your starter S terminal wire from the ignition switch. This is what tells the starter to turn on. So on the Bobcat, you're going to have this white wire, and it appears to be completely white, or supposed to be completely white. It used to be before it had all these hydraulic leaks over the years. This is your hydraulic pressure switch circuit, and this is going to be the yellow with a dark stripe. I think this is supposed to be black, but like I said, it's got oil on the stripe, and I went up further, but everything is just so saturated it's hard to tell. I'm pretty certain this is a yellow with black stripe wire. This goes up to the switch right here on the side of the oil filter housing for the hydraulic fluid. Basically what this does is when it sees pressure inside of this little block here, it trips this switch. And that tells the dummy light up on the dash, hey, we have hydraulic pressure. Go ahead and shut the light off. The engine is running, blah, blah, blah. So I know where this wire goes. I know where the start wire goes. I know where the power and ground wires go. This is your power. Obviously red, black is your ground. Those are going to hook right to the side of my battery terminals. This wire here, I am almost certain is the charge circuit or the charge on circuit to the coil inside of the original alternator. I did not have the original engine in this, so for me to say exactly where that would have plugged in, I can't give you a definitive answer, but I do know that that is the same style that Mitsubishi used on their alternators back in the late 90s, so I'm assuming that this is probably going to be what that came off of. The yellow wire here, I believe, is the oil pressure switch wire. Again, like I said, I need to go into the Bobcat manual, which I cannot find my manual. I know I have it. I just haven't been able to locate it since we bought our house and started moving everything around. So that's those wires. A couple of these other wires are not going to be used in this particular circuit. And when I figure out exactly what they do, like I said, I'll give everybody an update on that. I had to turn all four of these bushings down to 7/8 of an inch, which I believe is 0.965 or something like that. I can't remember the decimal ratio right off the top of my head, but they were about 1.25 inches, and I've turned them down to 7/8 of an inch. All four of them are 7/8 of an inch. So that worked out very, very well. Let me get my flashlight on. I want to show you what I have done as far as the coupler system goes. So you might have a hard time hearing me because I'm talking from the top, and I'll show you what I did there. That is the original hydraulic radiator. But right here is the coupler system. I have enough shaft in there that 90% of my key is in the shaft. So the shaft out of the engine goes almost to the very edge of the inside of where the couplers meet. So what I did is I started lining things up in here. And what I would do is this coupler right here I left loose. And the way that I centered everything is I would snug down all of my motor mount bolts, and I'll show you those in a minute, and I would slide this back and slide it in place. And when the engine was all snug, not super tight, just snug enough to square up anything that could have been a little bit off, that basically guarantees that I'm almost perfect. I took a feeler gauge and tried to get a good center on this, but it's very hard. I thought about making a plastic outside diameter 2-piece tube that would slide over this that was the same diameter as this, but I don't have any material that's exactly that diameter. But I was thinking that would help for centering it. But all I did was inside of this red biscuit that goes in between the two, there's a hole that's the same size as this shaft. So when I was putting it all together, I mounted up my coupler on the pump side, which they had special machined for this. And sorry, my camera turned the other way. I don't want it doing that. Basically, I took this and stuck the biscuit in it, centered this to the center of that, and took a feeler gauge around the outside of this in between the diameter here and the cutout on the inside of this, and it was right around 80 thousandths all the way around. It was very, very close to being center. That's how I centered the motor. And we're going to get down to the most important part, I feel, of this entire project for this particular loader. Like I said, this is a Bobcat 642B. I knocked all of the rubber bushings that would have been in here out of this plate. And the reason why I did that is you want to make sure that your engine in a system that has a coupler like this and not the original U-joint setup that came in it, that would have bolted to the back of the flywheel on the Mitsubishi engine. This is now a solid coupler system, so you want your engine mounted solid, just like it would be on any hydraulic unit for a log splitter, on a garden tractor, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, you want your coupler systems that are designed like that, a Lovejoy style, to be mounted securely here. So basically what I did is I took all the rubber bushings out. These are the washers that would have sat on top of this while it was in this hole, and squish all the rubber out flat so it would kind of cinch it to basically the center of that bushing. So you had a little bit of rubber play, but not a lot, and this more so just kept it from coming out if there were a rollover incident. The weight of the engine alone held it down on the rubber bushing in between this plate right here and the base or the floor of the unit. After I got all that stuff out of there, I found my center, drilled all 4 holes. I did have to get longer bolts. The ones that were included were about 3/4 of an inch too short. That would have been, I am not certain what I did with the original hardware. I may have already tossed it over here. Yes. So this is the original bolt. As you can see, it's quite short. I had a tape measure somewhere. I don't know what I did with it, or I'd measure them for you. But just looking there, it has to go underneath of this 1/4 inch plate, through this bushing, through this plate, and still have room for a nut and bolt, or a nut and a washer. And as you can see, we wouldn't even have made it to the threads. This would have been down the thickness of the head of that bolt. So, you know, like that underneath. Plus, there's a washer underneath each one of those to help span the load that the bolt will have on the plate. Like I said before, the plate in this system is fantastic. It's well stamped. It's very square. It looks like it is going to work out absolutely flawlessly. Just as a informational, I used the rear holes because I felt like I was getting more back into the center area of this, trying to get closer to the edge where my fasteners went. I always try to do that on any small engine project. It's just a habit. Don't really know why I do it. It just makes sense to me that you want to be closer to the structural point of the steel. And on the front one, I used the rear because I wanted to be able to slide the engine as far back as I could without going over the edge on my bushings. My bushings are basically right at the edge of the first bend, right down here. It's hard to see, but right here, they're at the edge of that plate where the plate steps down. And I did the same thing. I centered the washers on the platform and welded them in place. So this now centers this whole plate very, very close to perfect. You could leave all the slides and everything on there and just unbolt those 4. Pull the whole engine out, do repairs, whatever you needed to do for the hydraulics, set the engine back in place, and you'd be good to go. Alrighty, as far as the exhaust system goes, I do want to touch base on the exhaust system. This muffler that came in the kit must be modified to work in this skid loader. I have to tell you ahead of time that if you do not modify this muffler and use it in your equipment, it will void the factory warranty on the engine. These are EPA regulated exhaust systems. I'm going to send this to my friend and have him laser cut this off on his table. I'm sorry, with water jet cut this off on his table. That way I can get this bracket out of here. And I am going to find a way to utilize the actual muffler that is designed for this engine. That way I don't void my warranty. But I want to get everything hooked up and functional. And then I will switch the exhaust out and we'll do a very, very final video of how everything went after that is done. So I want to go over a few things that come in the kit while I am on here with you guys. It gives you a lot of options. I have an extra charge wire, which I do not need because my power wire hooks directly to the starter, which hooks directly to the rectifier. So there is no additional wiring needed there. This red wire right here, coming off the rectifier, is going to solve that problem for you. It's going to charge right back through the big cable that goes to your battery. That's how this system is going to charge. So that should work out really, really well. As I said before, it's kind of complicated to see everything while it's already in the machine. I should have done a little better job with getting my videos planned for you guys, but I apologize, I did not do so. These are some extra wires. I assume that they're used for other applications that this engine would go to because they are not listed in the actual repair or in the actual installation manual. Like I said, I'm going to verify with Repower. I have to send them a couple pictures. I told the gentleman I was speaking with what I was looking at, and that's basically what he said was to, let them know if I needed anything. So I'm going to do that. Their customer support has been absolutely phenomenal. As you can see, everything's labeled quite nicely. Let me go ahead and see if I can't get that flash off. There we go. So my camera is not wanting to focus. Let's see if we can. There we go. Ignition, 12 volts, and on and start. So it does label everything really nicely on here. You know how this is going to hook up. This has to get spliced into my on and start, which is going to be a 12 volt power coming back at all times when the key is on, which should be the same wire that's powering up the CDI box and the coil system in this, so that it will kill the ignition power and it should shut the engine down. If not, the engine would continue to run and you'd have to have a ground circuit like I did on my other engine, which I'll show you that in a separate video. I will go over a few other things in that. But that's where we are so far. All 4 washers are welded, the plate's bolted down. I did run my bolts in from the bottom instead of from the top like they were originally. I'm not sure if that's how they were, but that's how they were when I got the skid steer. Again, 7/8 of an inch off of those. Motor plate sits on top. Bolt your engine down and everything slides almost flawlessly together. As of right now, I do have my factory exhaust hooked up. I am going to leave this exhaust hooked up for my test purposes only, to verify everything is going to run so I can get this loader out of my garage while my friend is getting that done. But before I really use this machine, I'm going to make sure that that is back on there. I don't want to void my warranty. I don't want anybody else's to void theirs either. Real quick on the radiator system. It did say that they wanted me to locate this or relocate this to the inside back wall, which would basically mean taking this, turning it up, and sticking against the back, and then allowing air to flow through there that way. But I don't think that's going to be necessary. I think that there's plenty of room with this engine, and I did look at the specifications for the other engine that they offer, and it's a Kohler. I believe it's almost the same height, maybe just a little taller, but that's not going to be affected by this as long as the exhaust system will clear, which, as you could see before, there's a lot of room back here. I did take a panel. After trimming down all of the plastic for the shroud, I left the edges and back wall because they fit really nicely over top of the factory hydraulic lines. And then I took this piece of tin and fastened it to the factory upper and the plastic factory side air deflectors. So now what we'll do up top is I'm going to take another piece of this white tin. This is actually off an old washing machine. We're going to lay this down over here. I'm going to take my plasma cutter and cut a nice hole in that so that my fan will fit in here directly. We're going to get the fan in here mounted like so. That way it is pushing all of that, or I'm sorry, pulling all that hot air that's being generated from the engine and this cooler. This is going to be directly above it. Once this is all filled in, it's going to pull an adequate amount of air across that hydraulic cooler, which I feel is going to be a better system. It's going to keep this cooler, and in the wintertime when the engine is warm, it's going to help warm up that fluid to a decent operating temperature instead of making it so cold for so long. So this should act as a dual purpose the way it is set up, and as you can see, I still have plenty of room. Let me grab the top to this. We're just going to sit the top on just to show you. I do have the air filter and such off right now for fitment purposes, and I still have to hook up throttle cables and choke cables. So that's where that's going to sit. Even with the top of this air breather and this thing having to come up as high as it is, with me cutting that shroud off where I did and adding my own piece here just to the bottom edge of the actual hydraulic radiator. I mean, the radiator is right at the bottom edge. It's almost identical in height. It's right there. So this is at the bottom edge of that radiator. So that air has to go through the radiator, which basically means that I'm always going to have cooled and warmed air for summer and winter conditions to help protect the hydraulic system on this skid steer. Well, I know I've been rambling on a lot with this video, guys. I apologize that sometimes I get long-winded, but I wanted to show you the progress of where we were, the things that we have done. I am going to be doing a little bit more on this entire project as far as videos go. So stay tuned. I will explain everything that has to be done in order to make this work properly. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and smash the bell. And thank you, repowerspecialist.com, for all of your support and amazing, amazing customer service with getting this project completed.